engagements and discussions to help one another improve and see how we can do more for our students going forward. So in this session then, I will start off by giving a bit of literature background and literature that have influenced our way of doing things. Then also background of the Department of Commercial Accounting, before I will talk about Cost and Financial Management 1A and 2B. Now, this is a module that I'm not lecturing on my own. I'm lecturing this with Manette Vermaak and Maurice Moton. And this is also, just for those who's not familiar with it, more a number-based, calculation-based module. And then Segu and Liz Segu will go through what they've been doing in auditing and internal control, which is more of a theoretical module. So if I then start to look at literature, the first person that I like to draw or would like to draw on is John Biggs. Now, John Biggs have been describing in a lot of his papers from late 90s, early 2000s. He talks about two types of students, the Roberts as well as the Susans. The Susans are your typicals or your student who are engaged in the class. She's interested in what's happening in the class. And the notes that she would be making are really, it's neat, it's study, and it's notes based on what the lecturer is saying. These are your students who normally engage more in deep learning. Whereas your Roberts are those students who we're all familiar with. They come into the class late, they're sitting at the back, they hardly look up, they hardly participate in the lecture. And if you look at the notes, it's definitely not subject related. The concern here is that, or one thing to remember is that it is not that this is just the kind of people that they are and you can't change them. It could often be that a student like the Roberts are having other issues that they need to deal with. It could be a student from a poorer socioeconomic background, student that need to work as well to pay for their studies, might have a family member that's sick or not well, or even during the COVID time, it could be those students who now have to take up extra responsibilities while they're at home, like looking after siblings or grandparents. So there's just so much going on that they struggle to actually concentrate in a lecture room, where the Susans might be the students who have it easier, living in a nice suburb, good internet, electricity. When there's no electricity, they do have generators. They don't really have to worry about anything else than their studies. Now, I do know this is something that, especially in our large classes, is hard, because how do you then help all the students in the class? And this is where Biggs came in with the concept of constructive alignment. So what that means is that your learning outcomes, teaching and learning activities, and assessment tasks all need to be aligned and speak to one another. And by doing this, students are then entrapped in a
You are muted, Jeanette.
Have I been muted all the time?
No, just for a few seconds. We missed what you said after, when you started on just the last sentence that you were saying.
Okay, so with constructive alignment then, sorry about that. What it helps us to do is to entrap students in a web of consistency. So without knowing it, students are learning everything that they should be learning. So this is something that we've been trying in the definitely in the costing module. The next person I would like to draw on is Gibbs. And he's made this comment in one of his articles that students are strategic as never before, and they allocate their time and focus their attention on what they believe will be assessed, what they believe will gain good grades. Assessment frames learning, it creates learning activity and orients all aspects of learning behavior. And here we can really see that a lot depends on assessment, because for many students, they see assessment as the curriculum. So how can we as lecturers then use assessment to help students? And this is where it's really important for us to look at formative as well as summative assessment. So that's your assessment for learning as well as assessment of learning. And unfortunately, we often focus too much on the summative assessment, which is also the high-stake assessments. Those assessments that if a student fail it, they have good, or the chances are high for them to fail the module. Where David Bout also speaks about that we need a renewed focus on formative assessment. So if we bring in more assessments for learning that are lower stake, we can help students to not have that big anxiety about the assessments, but also start to realize how this forms part of their learning. And if you just think of first-year students who come in, they're new at university. For many, it might be a huge adjustment being for the first time far away from home in a big city, and 6 to 7 weeks into the semester, into their first semester, they need to write their first summative assessment. That counts 40 to 45% of their final mark. And in those cases, I really feel that formative assessment can help students, especially just with those initial adjustments. Then Nicole talks about the principles of good assessment and feedback. And here I just have a list of 7. He later on amended and added another 3. But what he speaks of for good assessment and feedback is that it helps clarify what good performance is. It facilitates the development of self-assessment in learning. It delivers high-quality information to students about learning. It encourages the teacher and peer dialogue about learning. Encourages positive motivational beliefs and self-esteem. And then the last 2 is really important for me, which is to provide opportunities to close the gap between current and desired performance, and to provide information to teachers that can be used to help shape the teaching. The last person in terms of assessment and feedback, or 2 people, is Hattie and Timpoli, who speaks about 3 levels of effective feedback. And they speak about feed up, so where am I going? Feed back, how am I going? And feed forward, so where to next? An ideal learning environment occurs when both lecturers and students seek answers to these questions. The where am I going speaks to information given to students and lecturers about the attainment of learning goals, and this could be the passing of a test, or where students get a second or third attempt to do better than the previous time. The how am I going is feedback that students get on a test, and it's effective if it consists of information about progress and how to proceed. So how can you do better, or what do you need to do going forward? The way to next is not about necessarily doing more work or an additional assignment or an additional test, but it's also giving information about opportunities for learning and again, how to improve. Then lastly is an article published by Marlies Malan on engaging students in online learning. And in this article, she draws on literature on 5 levels of engagement. The levels are social, which speaks to having things like a Facebook page, WhatsApp group, discussion boards, Cognitive is then engagement with the academic content. And here something that's important is called scaffolding. So that's where students are expected to, say, watch a video, do a reading, and engage with an activity before they can move on. Something that Blackboard really can help us with is then also your learning material and textbooks. Behavioral is to work consistently, to participate in activities. Collaborative speaks to your group projects, and then emotional is sharing, dealing with issues like anxiety, commitment in a group task. And I will show how we've then, by drawing on this theory, some of the things we've done in the costing module. So just briefly, the Department of Commercial Accounting, for those who's not familiar with the department, we offer a 3-year diploma, and this is offered on the Soweto campus. Our intake per year is normally about 600 to 650 first-year students per year. We then also, in some of the modules, are part of the Financial Services Operation diploma, where there's then another 100 to 120 students. And then in our second and third year modules, we have 450 to 550 students per module. We do team teaching, so we are 3 to 4 lecturers per module. So up until March last year, we've had 4 to 5 groups per module. So what this basically means is because of the fact that it is a diploma and venue capacity and quite a few other reasons, students were split into smaller groups. So we wouldn't have 600 students in a lecture venue, but we'll rather have 150 students, and then that same lecture is repeated 4 times for everybody. Each group then also had 2 double periods plus a double tutorial. So with the team teaching, it just helps us to split the workload of the lecturing, content development, marking of assessments among everyone. Our students used to do 2 summative assessments, which made up 80 to 90% of the semester mark, and then formative assessment contributed 10 to 20% of the semester mark. So as I now move on to show you what we've done in cost and financial management, and then the part that Segu and Lesegu will do, you will note that most of what we've been doing is based in Blackboard. And I think for many of us, that was a decision that we'll rather keep to what is available in Blackboard, which is already the system and a tool that students should be using, and not try and get 600 students to sign up or register for another platform or tool outside of Blackboard. Okay, so CFM 11A1, so that's your cost and financial management, is focused on introducing students to cost and management accounting. So it lays the foundation for what they do then in their second and third year. And this is important that students understand these basic costing principles so that they can then apply these in different situations and scenarios. So CFM 11A1 is our first year, first semester module, where CFM 22B2 is then the second year, second semester module. In the second semester, we look at cost volume profit analysis, direct and absorption costing, as well as costing systems. And as I've mentioned previously, I'm not lecturing this on my own. I'm doing it with Manette and Maurice. And one of the things that we've just thought, that even though each one of us are responsible for about 4 weeks, so that would be 1 or 2 units per semester, we can't each go and do our own design on Blackboard. So we followed a similar unit design for each unit on Blackboard. And this is just also to help the students so that they can have an understanding of how this module works and how each unit will work. So we start off with an introduction, which is basically giving them information of what happened in the previous unit and what we'll be doing in this unit, and that's 2 or 3 sentences. Then we'll show them the learning outcomes and assessment criteria for that unit as it is in the yearbook. Then we have the activities for the unit, which is a summary. We go through the theory. There's a theory quiz, the explanation of calculations, the practice questions for students, a place for students to give us feedback, a place for students to upload their workings. So that is of the practice questions. Students will then get the solutions, and there's a calculation quiz. So if I then just on the activities for the unit. So this was again just something to help students to know what to expect and to try and give them an idea. And this was specifically with first year students last year who had to suddenly, after 6 weeks, move online, to show them the activity that they need to do, give them a short description of what it is, an estimate time required for them to help with their planning, a suggested due date. And this was really, like on the quizzes, it wasn't that the quiz would close on that day, but it's more to help them structure and plan their learning. So if they stick to our dates, they will be able to complete it within the time period that we've planned for it, and they don't have to work over a weekend. And then there was the action required, which was a lot of it was mark reviewed, so your adaptive releases. Once you've watched the video, you mark it, you will get to the quiz. With the theory quiz, students then had to get a minimum of, in this case, 70% before they can get to the calculations. And I'll talk a bit about the quizzes soon. But so we've had this table. Then at a conference, accounting education conference in May, heard a few other people presented, and one of the ladies from De Montfort University in the UK, they've actually had a similar approach for their online students, but they've used more pictures to illustrate it, and then they've used a Word document. So we've then decided to change our activity schedule and to also make it more visual for the students with less information. So we still have all the activities, but we took the descriptions out as well as the how long we think it would take. And the other thing that we've done is we took out quite a few of the adaptive release gates. So now students will get access to all the theory information immediately. They still need to get a minimum mark for the theory quiz before they can move on to the calculations. Once they've done the feedback, they will get their solutions and the calculation quiz. And we then also separately show them all the Blackboard Collaborate sessions that we'll be doing with what will be discussed in each one of these. So this is then also just a way of how we've scaffolded the activities for students to make sure that they do the activities in the correct way, so that they first get that theoretical understanding before they move on to the calculations. So this then brings me to the quizzes. So with the theory quizzes, it is formative. And because of the requirement we've put in that they need to get a minimum score, we gave them unlimited number of attempts. So depends on how many questions we have, they will have to get a score between 65 and 70% before they can move on. the highest score then counts. And we have pools of questions, which is mainly multiple choice, true and false, and multiple answers. We do send them reminders from the grade center. There's actually in the grade center on that column, you can do a drop down, and it sends a reminder to all the students who have not completed the quiz. And the focus and the purpose here is really for students to grasp the theoretical concepts before they move on to the calculations. The calculation quizzes then, we gave them 3 attempts per quiz. Again, we have a pool of questions. We use mainly calculated formula questions. So those are your questions where you don't give not all students will get the same values. You put in ranges for your values. So it just helps a bit that not all students get exactly the same values, and there's then different questions for the same principle, so that when a student is doing a second or third attempt, they won't necessarily get the exact same question. Again, we're sending reminders from the grade center. Yes, students are getting immediate feedback. So once they've submitted the quiz, they immediately get feedback on for the questions that they've answered incorrectly. And the purpose of this is for students to practice the important calculations and then also to help them with their test preparation. What we've then done with the important calculations for each of our units, we've made a list of the most important concepts, principles, calculations that students must be able to do. And then for each one of those principles, we'll have a pool of questions. And then a student will get 1 question per pool. And what we've also said is, especially this year, because we've done quite a lot of the development last year, we will keep on every year to develop at least 1 new question per principle, so that we can keep on expanding on our question banks. So what we've done, and as this is a number-based module, in a normal face-to-face situation, we would ask students, for example, to prepare the absorption costing statement or prepare the direct costing statement, which is something that is a lot harder and trickier in the online environment, because just for one, we don't want all students to get the same question. And it is when you want them to just input answers, it's a lot harder to do principal marks. So a student will either have it right or wrong, and you can't really give a student 0 or 10, or that's how we felt. So what we've done based on our important and calculations, we would ask students, for example, give them information and then calculate, the value of the production units in the absorption costing statement. So that is 1 calculation within the statement, which then counts 3 marks. Similar in the second question, where we will ask them to calculate the production units in the variable costing statement. So students need to know where these points or concepts fit into the bigger picture. You will also see here, we've basically given them the information in a paragraph format. In my next example, we've put it for them in a table. And again, there's more information here than what students need for the calculation. So where they had to calculate the marginal income, they need to know then where those fits in the bigger statement. So I think the one concern we still have is that for the last 2 years, we have not asked students to do the full absorption costing or direct costing statement, as well as in some of our other units. Yet we've been able to more go into those smaller bits that's also important. And the practice questions that students still get are for the full statement, so the full set that we would test in a face-to-face scenario. The feedback then that we give to students that I referred to, so once they've completed a quiz, they can go back, they can see their question, their answer, the correct answer, and here we don't give them the exact calculation based on the values, but we will tell them that cost of goods manufactured and transferred to finished goods is calculated as follow, and we tell them what they were supposed to add and subtract to get to their answer. So they can then redo this question or go into their second or third attempt of the quiz. For our summative assessments then, what we've been doing, they are, the first one, they are structured according to the units over the semester. We have a test area in which we give them the information of the test, as well as then our academic integrity that they need to, which they need to first mark reviewed before the test sections will release. This test area that we built in Blackboard, we open from 4 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock in the morning, so giving students 6 hours in which they can do the test. However, for each section of the test, there's a time limit. So in those 6 hours that we give students, they can do the test at any point in time. But once they start, for example, with section 1, they will have 20 minutes, after which it will auto-submit. So that's for the 3 parts. And then we also ask students to upload their workings for these 3 parts once they've completed. And the reason why we are structuring it like this is for students to be able to use night owl data, which is till 5 o'clock in the morning. So yes, it does mean on test days that at least one of the 3 of us is up at 4 o'clock to start monitoring emails. But we've also realized that network connectivity in the early mornings are a lot better than later on. And for many students, it also helps because they can still do the test when family members are asleep. So yeah, that's how we're then structuring our summative tests. Just in terms of our final mark calculation and where our quizzes are counting a lot more then. So our theory and calculation quizzes are counting 25% in each one of the modules. We have with CFM2 also a bit of Excel in, which counts 5%. Then the first 3 tests is a combined 50% for first years, 45% for second years, with our final assessment counting 25%. And what we've seen over the last 18 months is, so in 2020, so last year in the second semester, 45 students had below 50% for their quizzes. And of those, only 2 passed the module. When in the first semester this year, 89 students had below 50%, and of those, only 6 have passed the module. So it clearly shows us that these quizzes, even though it's a lot of extra work, developing questions, building it on Blackboard, and then often persuading students to do them, it really does impact on their overall performance. And we're hoping to see that as we continue with this, that more students will engage at that deep level. Just a few other things that we've also been doing. We're doing weekly announcements where we again go, what happened in the previous unit or the last week, what's happening this week, and important dates of things coming. We do 2 to 3 collaborate sessions per week. And even in the first semester this year with the first years, we did not plan to do that many sessions, but the students were really hungry to engage, and they've actually asked us. And we've had collaborate sessions with more than 250 first years in the first semester. And in those cases, we've then made sure that there's at least 2 lecturers per session. Towards the end of the semester, we probably average at about 100 to 120 students per session. And the nice thing that was really encouraging, when we ask questions and we've asked them to put their answer in the chat, it was incredible to see how fast they responded and how much they participated. We also do have a Telegram group in which we are as lecturers with the students. The students are slow to respond, and it depends on year group. So our first years were more active than what the second years are. The reason why we on Telegram is you can hide your cell phone number as a lecturer, so students don't have your number. And also you can have more students in a group. And over the last, I have tried a bit of Kahoot with the students, and just to start off a collaborate session, and I really enjoyed those sessions with Kahoot. So just to wrap up my part then, and before I hand over, just so to how the learning activities and tools link with the literature then. So the activity schedule and the flow of our activities on Blackboard speaks back to your constructive alignment, the scaffolding component of cognitive engagement, and then also the working consistently, which is your behavioral engagement. The quizzes and feedback again speaks to scaffolding, which is cognitive engagement, the fact that assessment drives learning. It shifts the focus towards formative assessment and more lower stake assessments, and then the effective feedback, in which students can see how they are performing. They get a chance to redo a quiz. It gives us as lecturers a chance to see where students are struggling. We can then explain work again. So the multiple attempts on the quizzes and feedback from students speak to Nichols' principles of providing opportunities for gaps between current and desired performance, so students that can redo it. And it also provides information to the lecturers that we can shape our teaching. The feedback also we got during the units from students, especially those first few students who answer it, it helps you to see where students are struggling, or if a video is not clear for them, or certain explanations, so you can work on that and give additional information. And also the workings that they upload give us a sense of where they are struggling with questions, and we can then go back and either explain it in a collaborate session, or somehow make sure that we clarify those uncertainties for students. And then in terms of social engagement, it's announcements, Telegram group, and then also our WhatsApp tutorial groups. Okay, so we've all been sitting now for quite a while. So you're welcome to stand up, stretch a bit, just while I'm going to stop my slides, and then Sego and Lesego will share theirs. And if there's anybody who wants to ask a question at this stage, you are welcome. Sego, you can continue.
Thank you, Janae. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Sehopotse Malaji. I'm a lecturer in Department of Commercial Accounting, Auditing subject. I'm not alone. I'm working with a team of other 2 colleagues, which one will be joining me in the presentation later. Just showing my video for a few seconds. I will switch it off so that I can carry on with my presentation. I just want to ask from you if my lecture slides, my slides are visible on your side.
Seho, before you continue, I see a hand from Martin. I'm not sure if Martin would like to say something or ask a question. Martin? Martin, your hand is up. I think you can continue, Seho.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry, we can't see your slides.
You can't see my slides. Let me try sharing again.
Okay.
Can you now see the slides?
Yes, we can.
Are they visible enough?
They're perfect on my side.
Okay. Okay, thank you, colleagues. I think let me start by saying, I think as mentioned before, we don't regard ourselves as knowing everything, but we're just here to expose what we are doing in the Department of Commercial Accounting so that maybe we can get ideas from other colleagues, how they're doing it, sharing the best practices in trying to improve our module. So our presentation is for the auditing and internal control. This is a semester module. So we do 3A in the first semester, 3B in the second semester. So the presentation outline will cover the following, which I guess will be very familiar with most of our colleagues. We'll talk about what is our approach to teaching and learning, given that we now forced in the online learning environment. How did we approach assessment, tutorial, consultation, feedback, revision, and lately we will talk about the group assignments that we introduced for the first time in the 2021 academic year. So because we're presenting on masterclass for large classes, we just thought it might be necessary for us to share the numbers that we had last year as compared to this year. So you can see this year we sitting close to over 400 students in our class, and drawing from literature or even what we know, we are aware that student performance and success is continued to be a challenge in terms of achieving those maybe throughputs required by the university. And as a result, our module itself has been on a list for priority module for a number of years. And while we are aware that there might be a lot of factors that contribute to student success, things that like teaching method, student background, social status affect that, we thought maybe it might be necessary for us as lecturers to tackle some of the factors that are within our control. So in dealing with the teaching and learning, firstly, our module is presented mainly in Blackboard. So we use Blackboard as the main communication platform where we put the material that we want to reach the students. Any other platform that we might use is just used as a supplementary basis, but the Blackboard is the one that we communicate announcement, the learning material, they write their test on Blackboard and all the stuff. And then the pre-sessions cover what do we do before we go to class. So firstly, our classes are on a Monday, since we now on the online. And the Department of Commercial Accounting, we sit down and we shed the module across the week. So auditing is only presented on Mondays. So before the Monday, so a Thursday before the Monday, all material must be available for students on Blackboard, and there is nothing that prevents a lecturer that maybe work very hard to put the Monday even away in advance, so that we don't disadvantage students that really work faster and they want to get with the curriculum earlier. And then we do provide pre-reading material for our students, because our subject auditing, as mentioned, is a theoretical subject, and we really want students to engage with the content. And what we normally do, what will the pre-reading material consist of, is either you will gonna give them section of the prescribed material that you want them to go through before they come to the session, or we can even maybe give them an article of things that we're thinking relating to the content that we are currently teaching. And then in terms of homework, sometimes we provide homeworks to the students that we tell them that please submit this, and those homework will be covering the content. So this is just to force them to engage with the content. So you find that you cannot really answer this homework if you didn't read certain sections of the prescribed textbooks. And in terms of lecturing, I already mentioned this, that we lecture on Monday and our lectures are on Blackboard Collaborate session. All our sessions are recorded so that they can be accessed later by the students. Since we know that the sessions are only available for a limited period in the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, we download those recordings, and then we now upload them on where they can access them without any limitation. So our attendance, whether students attend our classes, so our attendance is not that great. In the last semester alone, the average of students that attended classes were 160, which is 37% of the class. And in this semester, in the first sessions before the first assessment, everything was still the same up until they write the first assessment. Therefore, we started to saw a drop in attendance. So now currently we're sitting on an average of close to 60 students that attend the live lectures that we are presenting. What is the approach that we are taking to teaching and learning? So just to, again, illustrate, to say auditing is a very lot of work topic, or students see it as a whole lot of work to read, a lot of theory to go through before you can apply it. So what we did in this year, we let's now, maybe because students sometimes are battling with this subject, let's remind them of what they learned before they come to third year. So auditing, as it's studying in the second year, they will do some of the things that we will carry on with in the third year. So for the first time in 2021, we developed a new unit where we call it Audit Fundamentals, where we were just bringing those principles that we know that they already learned in the second year that we thought are fundamental to carry on with the current year subject. And then we always make sure that learning outcomes are clearly communicated, because those are very important. Those sometimes inform what is going to be assessed and things like that. And at the end of the lecture, we always reflect back to say, did we achieve the learning outcomes? Did we cover what we promised to cover? And then during the lectures, where possible, we provide practical examples that are relatable to students. Maybe one of the examples might be, maybe when we're teaching a corporate governance topic, we use examples that are close to home. For example, we can refer them to the poor corporate governance that happen in both public and private sector. For example, reference to the VBS bank. And in terms of public, we can draw attention to, do you see what is happening in SAA, for example? What do you think is going on there? So those are the things that are close to home and students relate well with them. And then where possible, we use real documents to illustrate the concepts and the principle which we teach. An example might be maybe when we're dealing with the audit report section, we can just go online while with the students, draw an audit report of any South African company and see if what we're teaching them can they really see on that audit report. So that's trying to link the theory that we're teaching them with the practice. And we always encourage participation. Since now we're on the online, we don't see them, but we encourage them to say, please type your answer on the chat. Remember, there is no right or wrong question. And those that really want to speak up, we open their mics so that they can ask their questions, and we always prompt them to answer. Maybe if we gave them a pre-reading article, when coming to class, we want to ask them, what did you see in the article? What stood for you before we continue? So that students are always forced to engage with us. In that class, we also take care of exam techniques. So this is where we'll be illustrating to see, this is the principle that we're teaching you. This is how it can be asked in assessment. This is how you should answer it in order to earn marks. And we constantly ask students if they are still following, because this is also a challenge, because now on the online, you feel like you're talking alone on the computer without seeing the students. So if they're giving you that assurity of typing a yes, we still hear you on the chat, therefore it allows you an opportunity to continue, or knowing that, yes, I'm still with my students, other than just going there and present and close everything and no one really got what you're talking about. And we enforce understanding. And why am I saying this is because being a theoretical subject, sometimes students tend to want to cram and pass the subject. And now we're telling them that it's not going to happen. Please try to understand, because most of the time we will test you on how to apply the theory. So understanding is key. So in terms of tutorials are again central to our teaching and learning. So tutors provide a tutorial session at the end of each topic, and the tutors are the ones that manage the WhatsApp group and the students consult there. So we have a total number of, I think, 5 tutors, and they share the students that we are having in their respective groups. As lecturers, we are also in the WhatsApp groups for monitoring purposes. And we do tell the students that we are on the WhatsApp group. So this is just to help even the type of things they're posting on their WhatsApp group now are in line with what we want them to do. So because sometimes students tend to no longer engaging on the content, but just talking their own thing on the WhatsApp groups, now that they know that we are there, they really just ask questions that are content related. All the tutorial sessions are recorded, and they are in the form of structured and unstructured. So the structured tutorial will be where we already gave the students a question in advance to attempt, and when tutors they go there, they go through the questions. Unstructured then becomes in a way that we are not limiting the students to listen to the question that we're presenting on a particular day. They are very free to ask any question that maybe they are not clear of, whether it's something that they didn't get right from the lecturers in class. They can still ask it from the tutors. And since as part of our assessment, we test application, I will talk about this later, tutors then also address the application type of question in the structured tutorials. And we having a weekly meetings with the tutors whereby they now provide us with the feedback from tutorials, I think including our lectures, because our tutors attend the lectures, and reason behind that is because we want us and the tutors talk the same language when we go to the student. And tutors, they come back and they provide feedback from tutorials. So if there's any questions that the tutors were not able to answer, they bring them back to us, and then as lecturers, we deal with them, and tutors go back to the students and address those particular questions. And then again, the attendance for the tutorial is not very great. So in the first semester, as I mentioned in the previous class, that 160 students maybe were attending our classes. The same number were attending the tutorial session. So as the class attendance drops, even the tutorial attendance drops. And then, however, tutors are happy because they're telling us that those who attend fully engage with them. And as lecturers, sometimes we just visit the tutorial sessions to see what's really going on, and we can attest that, yes, students are really participating. In terms of consultation from the lecturer side, we can say the consultation with the students dropped significantly. So the students are not really coming forth and asking questions. They do come, but it's only few of them. So then as a team, we thought maybe the possible reasons might be the availability of recorded sessions, including tutorial session. Maybe data is a problem. It might be the connectivity issues, or maybe they are just comfortable with the tutors because we can see that they are consulting more with tutors on the WhatsApp group. And as lecturers, we are able to deal with any difficult questions that the tutors cannot answer to the students. In terms of assessments, again, we have quizzes. We have assessment opportunity 1 up until 3 since we adopted the continuous evaluation method. And we also introduced a group assignment, and together they will make a final mark of 100%. So in terms of quizzes, we give students a quiz at the end of each topic. This is just to enforce understanding of principles that they require before they can carry forward. And the way our assessment are structured, for example, assessment 1, and the very structure, I think, is the same for all other assessment, is split in terms of part A and part B. So the part A is normally your MCQ type, true or false, and we are using pools. And then the part B is the application type questions, where we want students to apply themselves, and they will write their answer on a Word document and submit to us on Blackboard. And for assessment 1 and 2, we provide replacement assessments, which is different from the assessment that they're written. And these assessments are available for all students. So if there is any students that missed assessment 1 or assessment 2 for whatever reason, they get an opportunity to improve their marks, to write that assessment. Or if someone feel like they didn't do very well in assessment opportunity 2, they still provided an opportunity to improve their marks on the oncoming assessment. So talking about challenges, we know about things that have been happening, And we really worried about the integrity of our assessment, given that if we're on a face-to-face environment, we would invigilate our students. Now that is not happening. So just to give an example, to say in the last year, second semester alone, we picked 26 possible transgressions while we were marking the students. And these transgressions were like where we can see that when you're marking, you can see that, no, the paper I'm marking, I've seen it somewhere. And through further checking, then we managed to get 26 students. We submitted those to the judicial services. And out of that, 25 students took a plea deal. We withdrawn one of the case due to lack of evidence. And why we worried about integrity is because our assessment is like theoretical basis. On a face-to-face, students will write and you will invigilate them. Now they're sitting at home. We like it or not, we know that they have in their textbook somewhere. We already heard about example where they assisting each other. So that poses a challenge as lecturers, because we need to balance between being innovative when we're setting our assessment and still be in line with the outcomes that we say we want to achieve at the end of the day. So when we start this year, in the beginning of this year, or before I can even go there, so in order for us to try to minimize those risks that we're facing, we set those like assessment that we're thinking are balanced in terms of part A and part B, where part A is those quiz type, part B is application types, and then our pools are randomized. However, this setting of pools and everything require hard work from lecturers. Me and my colleagues always think we always working. So this is really hard work, but we're learning a lot from it. So in order to enforce ethics, we use the examples from the judicial services to say, guys, this is what previous students did, and this is how they've been handled, without referring to specific names, so that it can help us to make sure that our students don't go and do the same thing. And I think in this semester, we invited judicial services in the departmental career progression series, so that students can just hear it from the horse's mouth to say, what are the implications of being unethical when you are dealing with your assessment? And then in the second semester, we now introduce the Invigilator app, so that we can see that we're getting what we want to get, and we identify few challenges, but some of them were really admin related. And then there are few instances where we found where maybe the app will tell us that this student failed a certain criteria, and when we went there, we found that students are actually listening at our lecture recording while they are writing the assessments.
Wow.
In terms of feedback, we do provide feedback on assessments, and what we're doing there is to enforce principle of, enforce principle that are missed by students. So using maybe different methods of reporting. So when we mark, we will notice things that our students are really missing. Then if we think it needs more detailed discussion or explanation, we can record a video. If we're thinking maybe they need to see the slide and hear us talking through the slide, we prepare that. If it's just a small something, we use WhatsApp voice notes just to quickly say, guys, you're doing this, you shouldn't be doing it, please do this, and we send immediately on the WhatsApp groups. And before replacement assessments are written, where possible, where we finish marking, we send the results, so that it can also help students to gauge whether do I really need to take the replacement or not. And the suggested solution for the assessments are made available, and any admin-related issues are also made available. For example, we realized that our students are not really engaging with the information that we gave them. We will give them, let's say, assessment instruction before they write, and you distribute that on their Blackboard, on their WhatsApp groups, but on the date of the assessment, they're still asking you to say, how do I get the QR code for the Invigilator app? What do I do if this and this is happening? So if we experience that in the first assessment, before we write the next, we make sure we talk to them to say, guys, you're doing this and we don't appreciate it. Please engage with the material that we're sharing with you. In terms of revision, at the end of the semester or towards the end, before they can go to their study break, we do provide revision for all topics that we covered in the semester. This is just a kind of reminder of the content that we covered. And also we focus on areas that we think students are not doing well on it based on the previous assessments. And again, on these revisions, the emphasis is on exam techniques. How do you approach this question? When you get it, how do you read it? How do you maximize your marks? And we encourage positivity. And why do we encourage it? Because at this stage, a lot of students feel like they're very tired. They're dealing with a lot of other many modules that require their attention. So it's where you're just telling them, hang in there, remain positive, you got this with you, you're about to finish the semester, we believe in you. So colleagues, thank you very much for listening to me. I will be handing over to my colleague to focus on the group assignment, and I will still be available to engage more on questions and what do you think we can improve going forward. Thank you very much.
Good morning, colleagues. As was previously said, my name is Lesego Khumalo. I am in the same team as Sekgopoche, so I will be speaking around the same module, auditing and internal controls, but I'll be focusing specifically on a group assignment that we introduced. So similarly, I'll switch off my camera just for bandwidth purposes. Okay. Can I just confirm whether you guys can see that the slides are moving?
We can see the slides. It's not, we're on slide 11 now.
No.
Okay. Is that the slide that says teaching methods?
No.
Not, okay. So may I please just ask that you stop sharing and then we'll start again.
I've stopped sharing. Let me just. Yes, I think you're right now.
Okay, may I just confirm now that you can see a slide with teaching methods on it?
No, we see background and group assignment.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Right, so as my colleague Sekgopoche had mentioned earlier, there are a number of factors that affect student success. With our group assignment, what we sought to do was come up with an intervention that addresses some of those factors that we can control on our side. Also taking into account that we do have quite a large group that we're lecturing to, and since the pandemic hit, we're also having to do all of this in an online environment. Now, the first thing that we looked at was our teaching methods. And literature, in this case, Dortage, says to us that teaching methods display or play a significant role in having an impact on student attitudes towards the subject, and consequently then also what their performance would be. So what we were looking for was something that would move us away from traditional teaching and learning methods, as these tend to focus on educators simply regurgitating what's in the prescribed textbook. this obviously might not be as practical as we would like for it to be, and it also may limit the learner's ability to maximize their learning. Now, Kiwi says, and this was from a study that was performed specifically with accounting qualifications, and Kiwi, from the results of her research, then says that educators need to include more realistic and practical examples in order for them to, for students to be able to develop more pervasive skills. Now, this then led us to the next thing that we looked at, and this is, what are the skills that we're trying to transfer to our students? What skills do we want them to have once they graduate, especially with the onset of the fourth industrial revolution? Now, we know that employers are looking for employees that are work ready. Kahu and Nelson mentioned this. The World Economic Forum also then tells us, and this is for various sectors, that there are a number of skills that are required for the future of world, or the future world of work, apologies. These include things like critical thinking, analysis, complex problem solving, and emotional intelligence. Some of these skills are also required specifically for future auditors, and the European Court of Auditors tells us this. We need to be teaching our students technical skills, ethics, thinking, reasoning, and solving problems, or problem-solving skills. Now, a recent study that was performed by some colleagues, Marx, Mohammed Ali Haji, and Lansell, say that accounting programs need to assist in developing some of these fourth industrial revolution skills. So it's important that we as higher education institutions, in order for us to produce these graduates that are future fit or future proofed and ready for the world of work, we need to do something in order to help produce these graduates and ensure that they will stand the test of time. This then led us to attempting to introduce project-based learning in the form of our group assignment. We tried to respond to these challenges that we've been speaking about. We hoped that this approach would stimulate more student engagement, that it would deepen their understanding of the module by providing a practical case study that they needed to attend to in collaboration with one another. And literature tells us that project-based learning is a tool that can be used for this. It will help enhance students' understanding and consequently performance. It's a strategy that's student-driven, it's interdisciplinary, it's collaborative, and it's technology-based. These are all things that, from the literature that we've read, we want to try and inculcate into our students. So when we then developed this group assignment, we had the following objectives. The main objective was for our students to be able to practically apply auditing principles in varying environments and to develop these softer skills, which are becoming increasingly important in the fourth industrial revolution. So we want them to apply these skills with various clients. We wanted some of these soft skills, we wanted them to develop with things such as communication or collaboration, and this would happen between themselves as group members, but also how would you communicate with the client, and I'll share a little later how, we tried to transfer this skill. We need them to be able to use technology to complete tasks. And then obviously something which is very important is emotional intelligence in dealing with other people. And in this case, it was with their group members. Lastly, also then problem solving in a business environment. Now, the way we then set up this assignment is, remember we have 400 odd students. What we did is we split them into groups of no more than 5 or 6 members. And these groups were selected by us as lecturers. So nobody had the choice of who they wanted to team up with. We allocated groups. It was random on our part, but the students could not select who they wanted to be with. We used Microsoft Teams as a platform where they would complete their assignment. This is where they would have their meetings, and also where they would store any documents that they used in the completion of their assignment. This is also where we communicated any information that they needed. We then added our tutors onto Microsoft Teams as well. Now, what we used our tutors for is they acted as financial managers. Now, remember, our module is auditing. So our students were acting as the auditors, and they were then engaging with our tutors who were standing in the place of financial managers. So in other words, the tutors were the clients, which is what I mentioned on the previous slide. We wanted to see how they would communicate with clients. So in this case, our tutors stood in the stead of the client. We also then had different scenarios that resembled companies that have adopted modern technologies. These are companies such as Uber, Netflix, or Airbnb. So what we did is we developed case studies that was similar to these companies. We provided the students with business models, internal controls, systems. All of these approximated what would happen within one of these types of companies. The reason we went with multiple companies goes back to the way we've approached our assessment strategy, where we try and provide the students with pools. So we didn't want one assignment where for 83 groups, we're getting exactly the same answer. The students can just sit, one group completes the assignment, and then the other 82 all copy the same assignment. So we had 5 different scenarios spread across the 83 different groups. So this was us approximating pools and hopefully then forcing students to actually have to do the work without relying on somebody else's work. Initially in the first semester, our assignment focused on only one cycle within our module. But in the second semester, we continued with this assignment. So it depended on what the students had done within the first semester. We then continued it into the second semester, where we then moved on to audit documentation of the work that they would have performed in the first semester, as well as reporting. So we tried to ensure that in the first semester we were assessing the principles that they learned then, and then in the second semester the assignment continued, so there was some semblance of similarity or continuity on the students' part, but we were now assessing principles that were covered within the second semester. We provided the students with an assignment outline, and this clearly indicated what was expected of them. In terms of feedback and what we experienced with this assignment, from a lecturer's point of view, it definitely was a lot more work. We had to put a lot of research into how we wanted to approach the assignment, how to administer the assignment, how to set up our case studies in order for us to achieve the outcomes that we intended to achieve. We also obviously then needed to learn about the platforms such as Microsoft Teams that we then wanted the students to complete the assessment on. So there was a lot of research that we needed to conduct on our part in order to run this assignment successfully. We definitely took a lot of learnings from how we ran the assignment from first semester through to second semester, and we already implemented some of those learnings within the second semester. And as we carry this assignment on into the future, we will take even more learnings in and try and improve our teaching methodologies or pedagogy. We've definitely identified that there's an opportunity for research output from our approach to how we are facilitating or administering this assignment. So we're hoping this didn't just benefit the students, but it definitely has benefited us as academics as well. Now, from a student point of view, there was extreme anxiety. One of the biggest issues we had, as you may imagine, is students were not happy with being forced into groups with people that they may not know or potentially even like. We were very adamant that we will not budge on this. Remember, we're trying to approximate a work environment. We're trying to prepare them for the workplace. So our rebuttal when they requested us to change this is we want them to know what it's like in the real world. You get to a workplace, you are allocated to a work team, you don't have the choice of who you can work with or who you'd like to work with. So this is one of the skills that we wanted to transfer with this. We initially asked them to have all of their communication on Microsoft Teams. This was for our benefit when we are assessing the skills that we are trying to transfer to them. We wanted to have an audit trail to try and see, have you communicated professionally with one another or with the tutor? If there are any problems, so you're thinking one person didn't pull their weight and you want to apportion them a lower mark when we eventually provide marks, is there any audit trail that we can look at as lecturers that will then reinforce the decision that you students as a group are making when you're saying this person only contributed 10%, for instance, to the group assignment? A lot of our students weren't very comfortable with Teams initially, especially in the first semester. So they communicated a lot on WhatsApp, and this made it difficult for us to have a proper audit trail. Eventually, we asked them to transfer their WhatsApp conversations onto Microsoft Teams to try and mitigate this risk. The majority of our students did do well within this assignment. We think it achieved the objectives we were looking to achieve. There were a few students who didn't participate, and unfortunately, they obviously then ended up having really low marks. But overall, the students did very well. In the second semester, we haven't marked their assignments yet, but already we're seeing an improvement in terms of how they attempted it compared to how it went in the first semester. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank you very much for listening to our presentation. We will be open for any questions, comments, suggestions for improvement and other engagements. But before we do that, I'd just like to bring us back to what I said earlier. Sekgopoche mentioned that our module has previously been a priority module. Now, obviously, with all of these interventions that we're undertaking, we want to deepen students' learning, but at the end of the day, we want to see some sort of improvement in terms of success rate. And I can confirm that in our first semester, our success rate was well north of 90%. So we are seeing a marked improvement in terms of performance. We're relatively happy with the integrity of our assessments in terms of the interventions we've put into place. So we do think that our interventions are working. But as we carry on and coming up with more interventions, we're definitely open to having more detailed evaluation of what we're doing to try and see if indeed these improvements in success rate will be sustainable. Thank you very much all. We are now open for any questions.
Thank you for the presentations, for sharing really interesting insights and practices. You said earlier when you started as a team that you are not experts, but we are learning a whole lot from all these presentations that you have just shared with us. And there has been an interesting engagements in the chats as well. People are very, very excited and asking questions. And I see Janet has been responding to most of the queries that have been raised in the chat. This is exciting. We would like now to ask people to raise their hands and engage with the team. Hands. Questions. It seems as if people are happy. They don't want to ask any questions. UK, do you want to ask anything? I mean, you have been very active in the chat. Do you want to engage with the team?
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. The strategies you guys have used are very nice, and I think we definitely would either use it or have already used it. I think my question is probably more coming from my discipline, which is education, and I teach an undergrad third year module on communication. And I think one of the difference I kind of note is that in accounting, much of the, you have theory, but you also, much of its application is on the numbers, and you can do quiz. I think in our case, we also have tried quiz at some point. I think it hasn't been too successful because it's kind of the multiple choice doesn't work too well. And then we kind of really went back to the essay type. But the essays, I'm kind of really thinking about it in relation to formative assessment, because we do completely agree that formative assessment should be more of the focus. But then there are two things. One is that how do we set up formative assessment with the large classes? Because in a way, formative assessment would mean more assessment. And this, both from the student point of view and the lecturer point of view, is like how we deal with that, the workload. And then also quiz, I can kind of imagine it works quite well with large classes, because it does completely require a lot of effort to set it up with, the pools and, different types. But then if the quiz doesn't work, if it's more essay type, I'm not sure whether you guys have any suggestions on how we could possibly think about the essay type of the formative assessment, how we could work with the large classes. I'm not sure. I'm rambling around, I think.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the team who would like to shed light with UK?
Angie, I can try.
Okay, go ahead.
So I've recently moved to auditing. I previously lectured financial accounting, which is a lot more numbers based than auditing. So I can sort of relate to what UK is saying, in that where there's more theory and there's more writing, there is a lot more work in terms of setting up of assessments and then marking as well. Sekgopoche alluded to this earlier. It feels like all we do is prepare assessments and mark assessments, and coupled with the fact that in order to try and tighten up the integrity of our assessments, we do try and come up with pools. It is a challenge. It definitely is. Now, I don't think it is as big a challenge for us as it would be for yourselves in education. With us, we have two parts where part of it is multiple choice, so that's marked on its own. And then even our application questions would generally, in say assessment opportunity 1 would be 20 marks. For each student, that's what we're marking, 20 marks. So we're looking at maybe 25 to 30 points that we're having to mark, which is a lot, but I can imagine that it's very difficult for you guys that have essays. I know with our group assignment, what we've done is we've used our tutors to assist us in marking. With our formal assessments or our bigger assessments, we have had help in getting markers in as well. But of course, in order to ensure quality, as the lecturers, we are intimately involved. So it is a massive challenge. We don't have the answers, but we can definitely relate that it is a lot of work.
Thank you, Lesego. I see there are two hands.
Angie, can I just respond directly to that particular question?
You can
I
go
don't
ahead.
know if the other hand is something different, but
yeah, go ahead.
Just just in terms of, you know, I mean, there are a number of different strategies. I think the one thing we also can do is when we're using essays for formative assessment, you don't need to have students submit the entire essay. So adopting a more process orientation towards the essay and giving feedback on parts of the assignment is one strategy that some departments use, and it's quite effective because students are able to that's the one thing, you know, so not students don't have to submit the entire essay. They can submit parts of the essay, and it depends on how you would structure the question, the topic. The other strategy that you know, peer assessment is also another technique, but that also takes a lot of work. It does require thinking, and at third year level, it's perhaps something you could think about. It may be something that's more difficult to do in first year, but peer assessment, and it also gives students another way of thinking about assessments, not from the perspective of the reader and the marker. So peer assessment is another technique that we could use for large classes and essay type questions. In terms of formative, you know, the use of tutors, as I said in the chat, and as is very useful. But you have to actually oversee it. You can't use tutors to mark, in my opinion, to mark assignments without actually having marking workshops where you come together, you mark a few, you come to some understanding of the criteria and the application of the criteria or the rubrics. So it is quite intensive. So it is about balancing, you know, and thinking about what is the purpose of the assessment and the assessment task, and how can we best do that in a way that fosters learning, that helps students to learn more effectively. So, you know, there are a number of things you could grapple with, but sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, and it does depend entirely on the context and the discipline.
Thank you, Kiwi. I'm gonna call Rocky.
Morning, colleagues. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the colleagues that have presented on this platform. I learned a lot from your presentations, and I just want to make an observation here, or just an input regarding the students maybe being allocated groups. I've been using project-based learning for some time. I found that whereby you allocate them groups, I would experience lots of problems. Some students leaving the groups, others not working very well, some not participating. So hence, what I decided is a blended approach to it, whereby I give the students the responsibility to choose their own groups, and I think it works well also at this period of the pandemic, where there might be limited movement and students maybe choose each other in terms of proximity or acquaintance. Then I would say, okay, those who wish me to allocate them groups, please submit your names, or you submit your names through a certain channel. Then in that way, I've had only maybe one or two problems in terms of students working together. Yes, we're preparing them for the work environment, but at times we ought to be practical, look at what is happening at the moment, whereby if students are just allocated, you find that there might be problems, more problems than when they choose their own groups, if they want to choose their own groups. So I give them that opportunity to either choose their own groups or have groups allocated to them. Okay, thank you so much, colleagues.
Thank you, Rocky. I see Janet's hand is up. Janet, do you want to respond?
No, I actually didn't want to respond. It's coming back to the previous conversation about the essay type question. So I don't know if Lesego or Sego first want to respond, and then I'll come back.
Sego and Lesego?
Nothing from my side, but I just want to thank the tip from Ed Sibanda to say we're hearing that, and thank you very much for the tip. We will consider that going forward.
Thank you. Hopefully it will work.
Okay.
Okay. I've shared an article in the chat. It is by David Nicol and Suzanne McCallum. They at the business school in Glasgow, one of the universities, and it's an article where they've using peer assessment, but more change it to actually self-assessment. So what they do is students will write an essay, and then instead of, because what they said they found is where students often struggle to be critical to their peers, even if it's anonymous. They will rather be critical to their own work. So they will get then a peer's essay to review, but have to answer questions like, what are the two main differences between this essay and yours? What did you learn from the differences? Which one is better? So it goes through this whole process where on each essay, they do 3 or 4 reviews, and one of those reviews are where they have to compare their own essay with a very good solution, not necessarily the model answer, but still a very good essay that's well written. And I was just thinking that in a case where you have more text-based essay type assessments, that could perhaps work. And it's an easy article to read, and they structure it, put it very, there's a table or illustration of how they've done it and the different questions that the students had to reflect on. So yeah, we've tried something similar in our module this semester, but it was, it's calculation based, and it was optional. So we in the end didn't have that many responses, but still some of the responses and how students actually reflected on each other's work were fairly interesting.
Thank you, Janet. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question or comment? Okay. In that case, then maybe we can end the session. I would like to thank the team for an insightful and engaging session. We learned a lot, and I'm happy to see that with all this work that you're doing, you are able to get to 80% pass rate, which says a lot about what you're doing. And I think colleagues have learned a few lessons that they will take with to implement in their respective practices. I would then, with these few words, then I would like to say or declare the session officially closed. We will share the recording with people who were part of this session, and we will also send out an evaluation form. Please complete it so that we can be able to to see if people are benefiting from these sessions. And we're going to play out with some lovely music from Megan Stradham. So all, thank you very much. Megan?
Don't sleep, man. What's the matter with you?